This story took place about 5 months ago. I live in a house sort of out in the country. There's not a lot of people that live in my neighborhood, and the houses are spaced apart a little bit. I like it because I'm into wildlife, and I have a decent-sized woods on my property. One night, at about 10 p.m., I was stepping out into my deck to get something, and I heard some noises coming from just inside the woods. I see deer a lot, but these noises sounded like something bigger. Still, I assumed it was probably just a deer, but I thought that it might be a bear. I stepped out farther onto my deck and looked out to the entrance of the woods that was about 50 feet away. It was dark out, and I only had a little light from my deck, so I couldn't really see anything. The noises pretty much stopped, and after about 2 or 3 minutes, I went back inside. The next day, I walked out into my backyard and into the woods to see the area where I had heard the noises the night before. I got a little ways into the woods when I saw a clown mask on the ground. It was one of the more creepy-looking clown masks that I have seen. I wasn't quite sure what to make of it, but I figured some teenager had wandered into my woods or something. It just seemed strange to me because my woods is very large, and I know my neighbors well, and the ones with kids aren't the type to do this sort of thing that I was aware of. I picked up the clown mask and brought it back to show my wife. We ended up having a laugh about it. But that same night, I was watching TV at sometime around 11 o'clock when I started to hear some noises once again coming from my backyard. But it wasn't trees and leaves being moved around like it was the night before. It was the noise of screams. It sounded like a bunch of people, all just screaming and yelling. I couldn't make out any words in all the noise, but it sounded like it was coming from just inside my woods once again. I went out to my deck again and turned on the lights. The screams continued for about 10 seconds until I yelled into the woods asking who was there. Then they all stopped. Everything became silent. I expected to hear some noise from them, but I just heard nothing at all. Then I got a call on my phone from my neighbor asking what the noises were coming from my backyard at this hour. I told him I didn't know what was going on. I then went back inside, but kept a close eye out on my backyard. There were no more noises that night, and the next day I once again went back out to the woods, and this time got a little bit farther in, before seeing at least 10 clown masks on the ground, all laid out in a circle. They were all very creepy looking masks, and it gave me the chills. I haven't had any more incidences like this since then, and I don't know what was going on with the clown masks. If they were kids trying to prank me or something else. Either way, it was pretty creepy. This story is one of the scariest things to happen in my childhood. It happened when I was 7 years old. This was back about 20 years ago or so, and I had recently gotten a Game Boy for my birthday. I took it everywhere and played it non-stop. I was on a Little League baseball team back then, and I don't remember much about it, but I know that on this night I had a practice that my mom took me to. On the way back home, she stopped at McDonald's, and we both got out to go inside. I remember it was dark out, and I'm not sure what time it was, but it wasn't very busy and the parking lot was pretty quiet. She parked around back, and we went inside and ordered. As my mom was ordering, I realized I had left my Game Boy in her car. I decided to go back out to the car and get it by myself. I walked away from my mom and into the parking lot, and around to the back where she had parked. When I got there, I noticed a van drive slowly through the parking lot and parked next to my mom's car. As I approached the car, I saw the passenger's door to the van open and a clown that looked just like Ronald McDonald step out. He was looking right at me and smiled big and said hello. I wasn't really a fan of clowns at all, and I just kind of waved at him, then tried to open the door to my mom's car, but realized that it was locked. I remember the clown then told me he was Ronald McDonald. I said hi, and then decided it would be best if I went back inside. Even though I was a little kid, the clown just creeped me out in the situation that we were in. I started to turn, but the clown then asked me if I liked Happy Meals. I said yes, and he pulled out the latest toy that was in the Happy Meals. I remember I always liked to collect the toys they gave out back then, and this one was one of the cooler ones. It was some action figure thing, and the clown had 4 of the 8 that you could collect, and it interested me a little bit. He told me he'd like to give them all to me for free, and that it was my lucky day. I should have known better, but I figured it was a good idea, so I told him I'd like him. He opened the side door to his van, and inside I saw a pile of toys ranging from cars to action figures and all kinds of other ones. I started to walk a little closer when I heard my mother's voice calling to me. The clown then jumped inside the side door of the van, and I noticed another man in the driver's seat yell at the clown to go, and then he shut the door in my face. I turned to my mom, who was now sprinting in my direction. I went to her as the van sped out of the parking lot. My mom hugged me and gave me a lecture about talking to strangers, then asked me about what happened. At the time, I was a little kid, but over the years I've thought about this all the time and how I possibly narrowly avoided being abducted. When I was a kid, me and my friends used to go to this one park by our houses all the time. We lived in a large neighborhood with lots of houses, and there was this big park that had some open fields and other things that we would go to. We would play whatever games we were into at the time. We were about 10 years old on this night when we went to the park to play football. It was about 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and it was starting to get dark out just a little bit. We would usually play until it got dark, because that was the time when most of our parents wanted us to come home. It was me and my friends Jordan, Brian, and Owen this time, and we played until sunset. It became dark, and we decided that the next score would win the game. By that time, the park had been completely empty for a little while, and on the side near a pond and a road, we saw a really tall guy dressed as a clown slowly emerge holding a balloon. It wasn't near Halloween time, and this guy looked to be well over 6 feet tall. As soon as we noticed him, we all got the creeps. We stopped and watched what he would do. He slowly walked into the park and then gave us a slow and creepy wave. Then he started slowly walking towards us. Me and my friends had seen enough, and we all started walking to leave. We left the park and then all went our separate ways, with the clown still walking behind us at a far distance. When we split up, I noticed that I was the one that the clown seemingly decided to follow. He was really far back, but I could see him slowly walking behind me down the street, holding his balloon. I walked for a while, then I couldn't take it anymore, and I sprinted the rest of the way home without looking back. I was sure that I had lost him, and I didn't see or hear him when I got home, and I went inside. I figured it was just a guy trying to scare kids for no reason, and I felt very safe at home. When I got into my bedroom to go to bed that night, I noticed immediately that my bedroom window was open a crack. Right away, I feared the worst, that the clown had gotten into my room or something. I was too embarrassed to ask my parents to search my room for a creepy clown for me, so I looked myself. To my relief, my bedroom was completely empty, and I felt better. I realized I was probably paranoid, and my mom or dad had opened my window. I went to bed feeling good, but awoke in the night to the sound of my window sliding upwards. I looked over and saw a man wearing a ski mask entering the room about halfway in. I screamed as loud as I possibly could, and he quickly went back out the window and ran away. My mom came running into my room, and I told her what happened. My dad ran outside, but the man was long gone by that time. We called the police, and they came and talked to me, and I realized that the man was likely the same one who had dressed as a clown. He must have slid my window open slightly, then came back at night. The scary part is I don't believe the man was ever found. This story took place on Halloween night 6 years ago. I was a 16-year-old high school kid at the time and lived with my mom and sister. My mom went to take my little sister trick-or-treating and then go to a friend's house, and I decided to stay home alone. I was too old to trick-or-treat, but I also didn't have any plans with friends, so I just stayed home and watched some scary movies. We lived in a neighborhood that wasn't too busy, but I did have a bowl of candy to hand out to people who came. All in all, just 6 people showed up in total, and I ended up eating more of the candy myself than I gave out. I turned off the lights to the house at 9 p.m., so nobody else would stop by. Then I made some popcorn and put on another movie. Then at about 10 p.m., I heard the noise of a car driving by outside. I assumed that it was my mom and sister returning, and I kept watching the TV I had on in the living room. I didn't hear them come inside after about a minute, so I went over to the window and peeked out. What I saw was a small SUV parked in front of our house on the street. It was a little strange because I didn't recognize it to be somebody that lived on our street. Then I saw the doors open, and 4 large people who had to be adults get out, except they were all wearing clown masks. They all started to walk up my driveway. When I saw this, my heart started pounding, and I immediately got a little scared. I hoped they were just trick-or-treating, but by the size of them, they were not young at all. Then I saw 3 of them go in different directions towards the back of my house, and 1 go to the front door. I quickly ran away and went upstairs to my room. I hid inside and then heard a knock on the front door. There was no chance I was going to answer it, and I stayed in my room pacing back and forth thinking of what to do. I called my mom, but she didn't answer. Then I heard the sound of glass breaking coming from downstairs. I dialed the police at that point and whispered to them that my house had just been broken into and gave them my address. At the same time as this, I was trying hard to focus on the noises from downstairs, if anybody was going to be coming upstairs or not. I don't know what I was thinking, but I panicked and hung up the phone. I hadn't even listened for how long the police would take to show up. I then heard footsteps starting to come up the stairs, and I became extremely scared. I knew I didn't have any locks on my door, and if they decided to come in my room, they would likely see me. I decided to open up my window and jump out. I felt it was a manageable jump for me, and I didn't want to be in my room if the clown went in, so I opened it up and jumped out. I hurt my feet as I hit the grass, and I tumbled over, but all in all, I was just fine. I ran as fast as I could to my neighbors down the street and pounded on their door. They were the neighbors I knew the best, and they let me in right away. I explained to them what was going on, and they let me wait in their house. Eventually, the police showed up, and 2 of the 4 men were arrested, with the other 2 being found several hours later. It made for my most scary Halloween.